Welcome back to Train Tuesday. I hope you guys had a great week since the last time we spoke. We've got another great night lined up for you. It's going to be talking about Athearn HO tonight, so hope you're ready for that. Before we get started, let's go check and see who's joining us tonight out there in virtual train world. Let's see. We have got Sean, Ron, Amy, Charles, Roger, Darren, Eric, Anthony. Hybrid Hobbies in the house. We got Keegan, Frederick, Sid, and Frederick, Abel, Cornell Custom Trains, DJ Model Works is in the house. We've got John and Tim and Owen and Roger. So, hey, welcome aboard. Glad to have you guys on board. It's hard to believe it, but April is just about half over, and you have got until Friday the 29th to pre-order with your dealer anything that we've talked about in previous Train Tuesday broadcasts, as well as what we're going to talk about tonight. And we've got a little bit of everything for you tonight. This is based on what feedback we've gotten from you that goes straight to our product development. And some of these things haven't been seen in quite a while. So hopefully you'll look forward to them as much as we are. And before we get started, we'll do one more round of shout outs. So let's see who else is out there. We've got Joel. We got Brad, Kevin, Jeff, Sean, Dave, BNSF Hscale. Not Hscale this week, my friend, but coming soon. Trust me, we've got some Hscale coming. We've got Ted. We've got Joel Ashcroft. He says, April, it's snowing here. Well, depending on where you're at in the country, it'll probably snow here next week, even though it's 70 degrees right now. We've got Jimmy, Victor, KCG Rail. We've got Ted, Chris, and Mr. Kevin Barwell. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Great month of really cool products that we want to talk about. And let's do what we always do. Let's go ahead and assume the comfortable position in our workshop chair. We'll put down the hobby knife and grab the beverage of your choice. And let's get started with another Train Tuesday. So remember I said we're going to be showing some things that we haven't done in quite a while. And this is one of them. This is one of those things that we figured, we've offered it in the previously in the Ready to Roll line. But this is a model that goes back. It goes back to the mid-'60s. And according to what we found out, this goes back to the mid-'60s. And believe it or not, this release is a little bit different. It's kind of a retro mod of a former older product. So let's see. Let's go ahead here and take a look at what we've got. All right, so the first one we have here is the Alaska Rail. Now, we know Alaska is very popular, and we're going to talk about some of the features of these too as we go through the various roads that we're going to be offering. Now, if you're an older modeler and you remember maybe the first or second version of these that you bought in the 60s, maybe the early 70s, you'll know that the rotary really does function. But on those earlier ones, it was a rubber band. It was a real simple mechanism of a rubber band wrapped around an internal pulley that went down to the front truck. So as the truck was propelled forward, the rubber band would move the rotary. And we've kind of brought that up a little bit since then. Now that has a motor. So there's an electric motor that spins that rotary blade. There's no more rubber bands involved. And something else that we're doing with these is we're offering them with a F7B. Now, we have offered these in the past with a steam tender, but they weren't powered. You had to add your own power. And after a lot of feedback from a lot of you out there, we decided to say, you know what, let's give them a powered unit so they could use it if they wanted to. So now here's the first one, is the Alaska Rail. This is based on their current paint scheme. Here's CP Rail. Now take a little bit of liberties here on this. Oh, we're having some issues with our. Let me try getting out of there and in again, see if that works. There we go. So we took some liberties on this one, but it was a fun paint scheme to do. And I'm seeing some comments in there off to the side. How far will it toss model snow? Reports from previous owners said that they did some stuff in the back in the day with different techniques of modeling snow, and it would actually throw the snow, but it's mainly just for effect. It's not really functional. Hopefully you don't have snow on your layout. If you do, you might want to think about finding a better environment for your layout. But with snow out of the way too, something else that you can do with these is it's not too uncommon to find these somewhere in the yard. Or if you want to have a really interesting operation session, put this as an extra maintenance away move from maybe one yard to the other. And it's always fun to have something like that in the mix. So here's the CP rail based on their action paint scheme. Man, I apologize. I'm having some issues with our computer here tonight, and I apologize for the disruption. Let's try this one more time. Okay, so here's the Conrail version. Some of you might not think that where Conrail was, they got that much snow, but well, you never know. A good old nor'easter comes in, and it might have to be put to work. Now, most railroads back before these were around, there was a wedge type of snowplow. Those are pretty common now, even today. You'll see them in parts of Canada, the upper parts of the West and the East. But the rotaries came in later, and the original rotaries were actually steam powered. They had a steam power to them. They weren't motorized though. The steam power was made simply for the rotary. That's where all of its power went. It required a locomotive in the early days, a steam locomotive by itself, or a couple of steam locomotives to push this device through the snow. And as years progressed, diesels took over. And so diesels were used to push these through. And that's why we're offering this with the F7B. We've replaced the tender that we had in the past with the F7B. Now these are DCC ready too. So they do not come with DCC, but they are DCC ready. So if you wanted to run this with your system set up for DCC, you can. You can get a decoder in there very easily with a 21 pin. So Northern Pacific, this is a railroad that definitely would have seen some snow. Definitely see a lot of snow up there. And if you look into that part of the country, look past in the last 50 years, you'll probably find pictures of these types of devices being used to clear out snow. Don't hear about it as much as we used to, but definitely Northern Pacific would have something like this back in the day to clear the main line. Now this is one that we've offered in the past. We're offering it again because, again, Union Pacific is popular, and this one's been offered many times in the past. This is very, if you're remember the UP models that we've done in the past, this is probably very familiar to you. So once again, Union Pacific doesn't just go through the sunny parts of the country. They go through some rugged terrain as well. So we wanted to offer this one again. And I think I've got one more in the mix, and that's the BNSF. Now we took a little bit of liberty here. Now, believe it or not, as recently as around 1998, BNSF did have to use rotary through Montana and Idaho and some of the more mountainous terrain. If you do a quick search, you'll find some pictures, but in I believe it was the 1998 BNSF annual, there's some great pictures of a rotary being used to clear a main line. So again, something you don't see very often, but they do exist, and every once in a while they are pressed into service. All right, So that is our collection of the F7B with the rotary. And like I said, the rotary now is powered by a motor. You don't have to worry about the old rubber band anymore. These will go around a minimum, they'll do 18-inch radius, but we really recommend a 22-inch radius for better effect. Now, something, like I said, not only do we not have that rubber band anymore, but we've got metal wheel sets. The original had plastic. The original also had those horn hook couplers. And if you're my age or older, you certainly remember horn hook couplers. Those aren't included anymore. We have McHenry couplers already factory installed, ready to go. And those are, of course, are compatible with all major brands of Hscale-like couplers. Now, the other thing, too, that's worth repeating is the F7B is going to come with a machine flywheels, multi-link 5-pole motor for virtually trouble-free interruption. And, of course, it is DCC ready. It's got the 21-pin that we're all pretty much familiar with now. So should you purchase this and you want it as a DCC model on your layout, it's certainly possible. So I'm going to go back here and look and see if any comments or questions that you might have. Brad's got a fun, it's a long one, but I'm going to read it just because it's a fun fact. He says, rotary plows are not actually the best for using in the mountains. I don't usually like eating rocks and trees that tend to end up in the mountain snow slides. He's not kidding. The best setup for mountain snow fighting is a pair of locomotives with a wedge, a plow, and a separator each end. That's what CP uses to clear the snow in the Rockies. Yeah, that's a good point. You know, technology's kind of moved a little bit away from these. They're not as popular as they were, but when these came out early in the 20th century, it was really the go-to tool for taking out the really large amounts of snows that they get out west and up in the Canadian Rockies. All right, let's see what else we've got here. Let's see. Yes, that's right. Like I said, we took a little bit of liberties there. And if you've been following BNSF, you'll notice sometimes, I see it in Galesburg, sometimes they'll give older equipment that's going to be sidelined or retired later, they'll give it a Great Northern lettering. But we figured we had to put Rocky the Goat on there because harkens back to its heritage. And it's kind of a cool throwback to an earlier era. So for those guys that like Rocky the Goat, here you go. All right, I am seeing a few comments about Hscale. Don't worry, we're not getting rid of Hscale. We are still working on the website. There's a lot of work to do on that website since our rebranding. So Hscale still exists. I just purchased some Hscale the other day, so you have nothing to worry about. And remember, we're going to be going deeper into Hscale. We're going to be doing Hscale in Genesis and Athern. So we're actually going to be coming up with some new things, and you'll be hearing about those soon. So I just wanted to address that to let you guys know we haven't forgotten the Hscale market. All right, so what's the next set that we've got here? I think we're going to talk some tank cars. Let's find out if we got some tank cars to share. And we do. So here's the thing. We've been getting requests from a lot of you out there that say, hey, you know what, the 80s and 90s stuff that you guys have been doing has been great, but man, don't forget, a lot of us still model the steam era. A lot of us still model the transition era. Can you do something for us? And so we did. And so we're coming out with the Athearn HO Hscale single dome tank cars. Now, these tank cars were extremely popular in the late 30s, going up into the 1960s. These are the old style tank cars that actually have a frame. These aren't what you see nowadays. A lot of these are long out of revenue service. but they were still could be found as late as the 1960s. But here we've got the Union Oil, and this is indicative to a 1930s era tank car. And what's really cool about this is back in those days, freight cars were basically a traveling billboard. So you would see some really cool artwork on some of these cars. And the Union 76 with the bright orange and the dark blue, this is certainly something that's familiar to a lot of us. You wouldn't see this on a modern day tank car, that's for sure. But for you guys that are modeling the 1930s into the 50s steam era, this is one you're going to want to add to your collection. Now, what we're doing with this, we're offering all these tank cars in 2 singles, or you can get a multi-pack of 3 cars. And so you have the option of getting, a multi-pack of 4 cars. So you have the ability to have 7 different cars with 7 different numbers, all in the same road name. So here's the single, and here is the multi-pack of 4. So here's another one going back a little bit. Not quite as early as the Union, but 1950s. So again, you could still use this with steam. You could use this with early diesel. This is another one we're going to offer in 2 singles, as well as the multi-pack of 4. And this is a great way to save a little bit of money when you get the multi-pack. And if you're doing a like I said, 1930s to 1950s on your layout, some of these cars will work just perfect for you. Coming up next is the Richfield Card. This is actually 1950s on, so you probably would still see these probably in the early 60s or so. But again, perfect for you guys that are modeling steam all the way up to first generation diesel. We're going to offer that in 2 separate singles, as well as the 4-pack. Union Starch and Refining. This is a cool car. This is a car that is indicative about 1952 on up. So again, you still have steam in there. 1952, steam on a lot of the Class 1s was still going strong, although the first generation diesels were starting to make their way in there. But you can purchase this car as a single. There's 2 different single numbers that you can get, as well as the 4-pack. And, the 30s to the 50s could be a really colorful time. And, that's why it's so popular with a lot of folks. The transition era has always been popular in model railroading. Here's one of the reasons why. We got 2 more to show you in this series here. Here's the Bell Oil and Gas out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. A little bit earlier era than the other ones that we've shown you. 1937. This is 1937, available in 2 singles, as well as a 4-pack. And then last but not least, and we've been getting a lot of comments on these, the NDM. And somebody was asking on Facebook just the other day, like, hey, what era is this? And technically, it has a build date of April of 1956, and they were in use throughout the 60s. And we get a lot of great comments from our modelers of the southern roads, south of the border roads, I should say. And that's always encouraging, because we want to make sure that we're offering roads that you guys want. And we get a really good response when we do railroads south of the border. So again, 2 singles, as well as a 4-pack. So let's see if we got any questions on these. I'll go back a little bit, because when I usually switch screens, I don't always see the questions as they're happening. Delta 9 says the 50s era equipment is very much appreciated. Well, you guys are still modeling it, and we're still going to produce it. Frederick has a great comment. BN use this type of tanker as fuel tenders. Yes, that's right. Kevin's happy about the tank cars. Yeah, it's been a little bit since we've offered these particular tank cars. It's been a bit. Let's see, what else we got? Now, another thing too, while I'm looking at the questions, maybe you model the 70s into the 90s. You can still pick up one of these, heavily weather it, and put it in the corner of your yard. These tanks lived many lives after they ran the rails. I've seen these used for storage of oil or fuel products. Their trucks have been removed, and they're sidelined on either an industry or in the yard itself, or sometimes just merely parked in the yard. Thomas is liking the Union tankers. Good to know. Forrest is happy with the NDM. Yeah, we get a lot of good comments on those. Hybrid Hobby's working on a collection, so that's good, and we're glad to see that he's got something coming for him. Yeah, these tank cars are really cool. Now, certainly you can say these were based on the blue box, but they've been so refined over the years that if you were to compare them side by side to a blue box offering, the blue box honestly would pale in comparison. For one thing, that tooling has been refined and it's been updated and updated again. We've added the, like I said, McHenry couplers, so they work with all Hscale type couplers. You've got metal wheel sets, which the blue box did not have. And the biggest improvement that I can see is the actual painting and printing. The quality of the painting and the printing is just razor sharp. And it's a lot further removed from the way they used to decorate these models. So these are just so much more refined than what we've offered in the past. And, you know, we try to continually update every time we release something like this. It's been a while since we've had these. And if you had these back in the day, they're kind of a fun car to run. And if you're somebody that's operating an industrial or a switching layout that's, you know, somewhat small, this is another reason why you might want to consider modeling the transition era, because your cars are shorter, your box cars are typically 40-footer. You can put a lot more industry and a lot more switching in a smaller space. All right, so what else do we have? I think we have one more thing I want to show you, and that's going into flat cars. Now, the great thing about flat cars is, I was talking to somebody the other day, and specifically on layout design and track planning. And I've always liked the team track concept of a track plan, because it's almost like the wild card of operations. You can just about spot anything on the team track. And of course, flat cars are perfect for that. Or any heavy industry that you have, these flat cars are perfect for that. So the first one we have here, we got a 1960s version of the Santa Fe. We're offering that in 2 singles, as well as a multi-pack of 3. So you have the opportunity to buy 5 of the same road and different road numbers. Again, this is 1960s. Yeah, this is the 1960s font, colors, all of that. In fact, let's go ahead and zoom in on that since it's a flat car. But you know, this definitely shouts out to the 60s with their super shock control. Now these are 60 foot. These are based on a 60-foot flat car. You know, obviously before this, they had 40 footers, they had 50 footers. By the 1960s, they were having a standard utility flat car that were 60 feet long. And they made a ton of these. So going into, looks like 1970s here, we're going with Burlington Northern. This is 1975 on up. Again, available. Remember, they come in 2 singles. You can get 2 by themselves, or you can get the multi-pack, save a little bit of cash, and get the multi-pack and get 3 different road numbers. Here's a road that we don't feature too often, but we had requests for it. For 1960 Chicago, Eastern Illinois. 1960s. 2 singles as well as a multi-pack of 3. Going back to the 1970s, we've got the Delaware and Hudson. This was a paint scheme that was common on a lot of their freight cars in the 1970s. Going to be available in 2 separate singles as well as a multi-pack of 3 rather. Now here's one. You guys in the Midwest want to take notice of this. Here we've got Sioux Line. This is 1980s era. So we've got something from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. I think we even got one here in the 90s that we'll look at here in a minute. But the Sioux Line, kind of a neat car, just begs to be weathered. You've got that white, overall white with the green. It's just begging to be weathered. Frisco fans, we heard you. Got one here from 1968 on up. And remember, all these flat cars I'm showing you, they're available with 5 different road numbers. So you can get the multi-pack of 3, or you can buy the 2 singles, or you can buy them all together. We were talking about the 1990s. Here is TTX version, 1990s. And last but not least, we've got Union Pacific. This paint scheme goes back to 1968 on up. Now again, these are going to have separately applied details such as the brakes. You're going to have the brake wheel. I mean, you're also going to have the machine metal wheel sets. You're going to have the McHenry couplers, and you really got a blank canvas for whatever you want to do. You could spend probably a day just looking through all the different flat car loads out there. There's even websites devoted to that. So if you've got an industry on your layout and you're like, you know, I don't really need a covered hopper here. I don't need a box car. This company gets, you know, plated sheet metal, or it gets, you know, heavy machine parts. Well, this would be the perfect car for that. Now, these 60-foot flat cars, these were becoming more and more common by the mid-1960s. Like I said, before that, transition era, you had your 40-foot and then you had your 50-foot flat cars. But by the 1960s, they were going very quickly over to the 60-foot. And although they're not as common now as they were, they're still visible. You'll still see them in maintenance away trains. You'll certainly see them being repurposed for other things. So use your imagination. These are great cars to add to your fleet. If you've got your layout ready for operations and you've got either a team track or an industry that would benefit from a flat car, you've got a chance now to kind of mix and match of all the different ones that we've got here staying within your time period. All right. So there you have it. That's what we've got this week to talk about at Athern. We got a little bit of time to talk about your questions. Before I go on to the questions, a couple of things, housekeeping to bring up. One of the things I wanted to talk about is I was talking to our service department this afternoon, and one of the things that can be frustrating for both you as the customer and our service folks is consistency. There's a couple of things. that we'd like to see to help you even faster with your service requests. If you're asking for a specific part on a released item, please be as specific as possible. Whenever possible, please use the part number, and please use your full name and your contact information. We've had some instances in the past where folks have sent in some information and used one contact name and then followed up with another email with a different contact name. And that, of course, just makes things really confusing on all ends. So for consistency and making sure that we can take care of you quickly, go ahead and be as specific as possible as what it is you're looking for as far as a part. Use a part number when available, reference the actual model, and be consistent with your name and all of your contact information. That way our service guys can get back to you quickly and take care of that situation. Get your rolling stock or locomotive earning revenue service on your layout once again. The other thing I wanted to say is, thanks for everybody that came out for the Colorado show. We were at Denver. It's been about 2 weeks now. And 2 weekends ago, myself and Mark, we went out to Denver, Colorado. And that was my first time at this show. It certainly wasn't Athern's first time, but it was my first time. And I was really impressed with the amount of layouts that were there. There was some great modeling. Had a really good time, and it was really great to meet some of you guys face to face. Anytime I can meet a fellow modeler and exchange ideas and talk about products, it's always a good time. So for you guys that were at the Denver show that stopped by to say hi to Mark and I, thank you. We appreciate that. And it's always good to talk in person rather than just seeing a little icon on a computer desk. It's just so much easier than a screen. So with that, let's see what kind of questions we got, and then I will let you guys get back to it. Let's see. Well, speaking of Denver, we got a guest here. It says, hello, Jim. Thanks for taking time to talk to me at the Rocky Mountain Train Show. Scotty. Hey, you know what? I love talking to you guys. I'm a modeler myself. Mark is a modeler. I've said it before, 90% of us here at Athern, we're modelers in either HO or N or both. And so, thanks for stopping by the booth and talking to you. Let's see, what else have we got? Any questions on what we've talked about thus far tonight? Now, I see some comments out there as I'm going through here. Any comments that you have, say, I'd like to see this F7 done in this road name, or I'd like to see a certain locomotive produced, go to the Athern website, go to the Contact Us page, and select the Athern Product Suggestions email and send that in. There's a lot of good comments. I try to keep track of everything that's going on Facebook and Instagram, and there's a lot of great comments, and I hope you guys are using that email because our guys in PD, they want to make sure that they're producing what you guys want. You'd be surprised. There's a lot of stuff that we have to go through, a lot of research that's involved. So if you get that information to us, that kind of gives us an idea. Hey, you know what? Maybe we should investigate doing this road or maybe this model. And that gives us time to make those decisions and then go through with the research on it. Frederick wants to know, will Athern be at some West Coast shows? This year, no, not this year, but in the future, probably. Yeah, we've got the national show every year, and of course that goes from city to city throughout the country. The other thing too is don't forget, even though the core of Athern is here in Illinois, most of the team is actually on the West Coast. So most of the guys in product development, our artists, all of our researchers, they're actually on the West Coast. So there's a possibility you might see one of our folks from product development at a show near you. So keep your eyes open. Ted Andrews has a good question. He says, do you need to retool the molds for these older models like the Rotary Plows? That's a great question because, again, this is a mold that goes back to the 1960s. Now, if you know anything about the injection mold plastic process, you'll know that with time those molds do age. And if they age and are allowed to age without any refining, you get something called plastic flash. If you've ever built a plastic model, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You have a perfectly shaped model piece with a bunch of excess plastic around it. It's no different with this. So every time we re-release something, our product developers, they look at the mold, they look at the state of the mold. And that's why sometimes when you request a model, say, hey, can you do such and such? It takes a little bit for us to get that mold back into action. And while we're at it, we don't want to just make it exactly the way it was before. We want to refine it. We want to make it better than the last time. So, and that's what we've done with this one. This is no different than any of the other ones. So this mold will be inspected, it'll be looked at, and any type of upgrades, we will definitely put them in. Now, the upgrade that we did with the rotaries this time is we added a powered F7B, which we've never done that before. That's brand new. Mark Williams says, hey, representing the east side of the country, would love to see you on the east too, especially southeast, South Carolina. Yeah, I would not mind going to South Carolina. That's beautiful country for one thing. It just seems like most of the shows this year kind of fell in the Midwest. Now, unfortunately, we missed Amherst, but we've got a lot of shows in the Midwest. Now, the first show that we're going to be at again, we're going to be at the St. Louis RPM meet. That's coming up in July. In August, we're going to be in the St. Louis area again for the Nmra Nationals. And it's still developing. We don't have any firm dates or anything yet, but it is developing that there is going to be a train fest. Thank you to the folks at Kalmbach. When more details are available, I will definitely share that with you, and you'll have a chance to meet us at that show as well. All right. Any other questions? I think I saw a question out there on the price of the rotaries. So keep in mind the price that we have, that is not the price that is at your hobby dealer, but our suggested retail price on these is $189.99. That's for the rotary plow and the powered DCC ready F7B. But check with your local dealer. He'll probably have a different price than that. All right. Michael's wondering if there's some Surfliner updates. Oh, I do know that they have been hard at work on those. And maybe in a future Athearn Extra, we'll see if we can get some updates for you. They are hard at work at those. And this is actually one of the most ambitious passenger projects I think we've ever done. The guys have been working overtime on these cars, and I think you're going to be pleased. But yeah, maybe in the next Athearn Extra, we'll see if we can get an update there for you. All right. So I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. Again, please be patient. We are working on the website. Hscale is not gone. We are fully investing in more Hscale as time goes on. So be watching that. You can still search for Hscale on our website while they try to work on the tab to make it a little bit more visible. But we are working on that. Any type of service stuff, please try to use your name and any contact information, as well as the part that you're looking for, the part number, and what model it's for. And then the last thing, thanks for coming out to the Denver show. It was a great time to meet you guys. I look forward to seeing you guys at the next show, which will be the St. Louis RPM meet. That's coming up in July. And until next Tuesday, when I've got some other goodies for you, I want everybody out there to be happy, be healthy, be safe, and above all, high greens, everybody. Have a good night. Take care.